I'm Commander Cassandra Reyes, United States Navy. I have spent the last 16 years working in the deepest shadows of the intelligence community. I operate in rooms that don't appear on building schematics. I make decisions based on data that won't be declassified for 50 years. I have briefed the Joint Chiefs of Staff while wearing sweatpants at 3 a.m. because a crisis doesn't wait for a dress code. And yet today, at my younger sister's wedding, I'm back to being just Cassie, the quiet one, the unfocused one, the little sister in the corner who supposedly works in HR and admin. The reception hall smells like expensive peonies, roasted duck, and polished silverware. It is a ballroom at a prestigious country club in Connecticut, the kind of place where membership is inherited, not bought. People are laughing, clinking crystal glasses, spinning in circles on a rented dance floor under the glow of 3 massive chandeliers. From where I'm sitting, at table 19, near the back by the emergency exit and the kitchen doors, it all feels like a stage play I've been forced to walk onto without a script. Samantha looks radiant, of course. She always does. Her dress is a custom Vera Wang that cost more than my first car. She beams as she moves through the crowd, dragging her heavy train behind her, accepting compliments as if they were tithes. To her, this event isn't just a wedding. It's a coronation. It is proof that she has finally built the perfect life. My parents are up front with her, glowing like they've won the lottery. My mother hasn't looked at me since the ceremony ended. My father shook my hand earlier, with the same distracted warmth he'd give a distant cousin at a funeral, his eyes already scanning the room for someone more important to talk to. I sip my lukewarm water and check the time on my phone beneath the tablecloth. In my other life, I am currently monitoring a developing situation in the South China Sea. I know the exact location of 3 carrier strike groups. I know that a satellite went dark 20 minutes ago over a hostile border. But here, I'm just the daughter who sends birthday cards a week late, the one who drifts from assignment to assignment. That's the narrative they wrote for me when I was 12, and they haven't bothered to update the file since. They think I do administrative paperwork for the Navy, something vague, something safe. Something that involves filing cabinets and coffee runs. I never corrected them. Over the years, it just became easier to stay silent than to try and explain the weight of what I actually carry. I watch Samantha laugh with her new in-laws. They are a prestigious military family, the Whitakers. Her husband, Liam, is a good man, a former pilot, now working in defense contracting. But his father is the reason half the guests are sitting up straighter than usual. Admiral Thomas Whitaker, 4 stars, a legend in naval aviation. He sits at the head table, looking like a monument carved from granite. It is the world my father always dreamed of belonging to, a world of rank, honor, and influence. A world I earned my place in over a decade ago, but one that he thinks is closed to me. It doesn't bother me anymore, not like it used to. I've built a life with its own rules, its own gravity. But even so, sitting here now, invisible in plain sight, I feel that old familiar ache in my chest. Not anger, not jealousy. Just the dull, throbbing reminder that no matter how far I go in their eyes, I'll always be a supporting character in Samantha's story. And the thing is, I was fine with that. I was ready to eat the cake, smile for the photos, and catch a flight back to DC in the morning. Until she decided to humiliate me. Until she decided to drag my service into the light and mock it, in front of the one room where my silence could no longer be mistaken for weakness. The rehearsal dinner the night before had been the first crack in the dam. It was held in the club's private dining room, wrapped in white linens and polite conversation. Everyone was glowing, buzzing with wine and the thrill of proximity to to the Admiral. I kept to the edge of it all, smiling when necessary, saying just enough not to seem rude. Liam had taken the seat beside me during the appetizer course. He was kind in a formal, structured way, like someone raised to measure politeness in handshakes and eye contact. "So, Cassie," Liam said, buttering a roll, "Sam tells me you're stationed in Maryland right now. Fort Meade?" "That's right," I said, keeping my voice even. "I was stationed near there for a bit," he said. "What's your specialty? Sam says you're in support?" I gave him the version I always give civilians, the one that is technically true, but tells you nothing. "I work for the Department of the Navy," I said. "Mostly data analysis, logistics, making sure the right information gets to the right people." His eyebrows lifted with genuine interest. "That's vital work, especially with the current operational tempo in the Pacific. Are you working with the new—" Before I could answer, Samantha's voice slid in from across the table. It was polished, loud, and laced with a sweetness that rotted on contact. "Oh, don't bore him, Cass," she said, laughing as she reached for the wine bottle. "Liam is used to real operations. Cassie works with spreadsheets and parking permits, honey. It's all very classified and mysterious, which is code for boring." The table laughed lightly. That fake, uncomfortable kind of laugh people do when they want to diffuse tension. Liam didn't laugh. He looked confused. "I didn't mean to pry," he said softly. She wasn't done. She had an audience now. Her father-in-law, the Admiral, was seated at the head of the table, though he was currently engaged in a low conversation with my father. "Honestly, Cass," Samantha continued, her voice pitching up just enough to carry, "I still don't understand why you even came in early. You never seem comfortable at these things. You're always checking your phone like you're waiting for the president to call." She giggled. "It's okay to admit you'd rather be alone with your cats and your filing cabinets. We love you anyway." My mother sipped her wine and stared at the centerpiece like it might offer her a distraction. My father laughed a little too hard, eager to show the Whitakers that he was in on the joke. I smiled. That's what I do when I don't want to show that it stung. I smiled and said nothing, even as her words curled around my ribs like razor wire. Cats and filing cabinets. The irony was almost suffocating. 12 hours ago, I had been on a secure video link with the president's national security advisor. I didn't own a cat, and the only files I handled were digital dossiers on high-value targets. But I couldn't say that. However, I noticed something. Admiral Whitaker had stopped talking to my father. He hadn't turned his head, but his posture had shifted. He was listening. His eyes flicked up, meeting mine for a fraction of a second. They were cold, assessing eyes. The eyes of a man who had spent 40 years judging character in seconds. He didn't say anything. He went back to his meal. But in that silence, I felt a shift. Samantha thought she was just teasing her mousy older sister. But she had miscalculated. She had mocked a service member in front of a wartime admiral. She had tried to score social points by belittling the concept of duty. I excused myself early, saying I had a headache. In the hallway of the country club, I leaned against the cool plaster wall and let the mask slip. My hands weren't shaking. They never shake, but my blood was running hot. It wasn't just personal anymore. Growing up, I accepted being the invisible one. I accepted that Samantha was the sun, and I was just orbital debris. But she had crossed a line. She had tried to strip me of my dignity in front of the very world I had sworn my life to protect. I pulled out my secure phone. I dialed a number that bypassed the standard switchboards. "Director Wexler," a voice answered. "Sir," I said, "this is Siren. I have a request regarding protocol for a personal event tomorrow. Admiral Whitaker will be present." There was a pause on the line. Then, "Is the Admiral the target?" "No, sir. He is the family of the groom. But I believe it is necessary to establish proper standing. I am requesting authorization to attend in full dress uniform." The director paused. He knew my file. He knew my family history. He knew why I kept my life compartmentalized. "Approved, Commander," Wexler said. "Permission to break cover for the event. And Cassie?" "Sir?" "Make sure they polish their shoes when they see you." The next morning, I opened the heavy black garment bag I traveled with, but rarely opened outside of DC. Inside was my service dress blue uniform. It was immaculate. The deep navy fabric was heavy, tailored perfectly to my frame. The gold stripes on the sleeves, 3 medium stripes of gold lace, marked the rank of Commander 05. I laid it out on the hotel bed like a weapon inspection. The shoes, high-gloss black leather corfams. I spent 20 minutes polishing them until they reflected the ceiling fan. The cover, white, pristine, with the silver oak leaf and acorns on the visor. And then, the ribbons. I pinned them on with slow, practiced hands. The Bronze Star, the Defense Meritorious Service Medal, the Joint Service Commendation Medal, the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal with the V device for valor, and right in the center, a small, distinct ribbon that very few people possessed. The unit citation for Operation Veil. Operation Veil was a rescue mission 2 years ago, an extraction of a downed pilot and his intercept team in hostile territory during a typhoon. I hadn't flown the plane. I hadn't pulled the trigger. But I was the intelligence lead. I was the voice in their ear. I was the one who found the gap in the radar coverage and guided them out when they were flying blind. 23 men came home because I didn't blink for 6 hours. I looked at myself in the mirror. The mouse was gone. Cassie, the admin, was gone. Staring back at me was Commander Cassandra Reyes, intelligence officer, call sign, Siren. I put on my cover. I adjusted my white gloves. It wasn't about revenge. Revenge is loud. Revenge is messy. This was about correction. I arrived at the chapel just as the organ began to play the prelude. The heavy oak doors were open to the spring air. I stepped out of the Uber. The gravel crunched beneath my heels. I walked to the entrance. The usher, a young cousin of the groom, looked up. His eyes went wide. He straightened his tie instinctively. "Ma'am?" he stammered. Right this way." I walked down the center aisle. My heels clicked on the stone floor. Click, click, click. Sharp, deliberate, rhythmic. Heads started to turn. At first, it was just curiosity. Who was the officer? Then, recognition rippled through the pews. I saw a captain from the Pentagon in the 3rd row. He did a double take, his jaw dropping slightly as he saw the rank on my sleeve. He nudged his wife. I saw the groom's brother, a Marine major. He sat up straight, his eyes locking onto my ribbon rack. He nodded respectfully as I passed. I didn't look at anyone. I kept my eyes forward, my face impassive. My parents were in the front row. My mother turned to see what the commotion was. When she saw me, she froze. Her hand went to her mouth. She looked at the uniform, then up to my face, as if she couldn't reconcile the two images. My father frowned, squinting, trying to read the stripes on my sleeve. He knew enough about the Navy to know that 3 stripes meant something serious. I took a seat in the 3rd row, on the bride's side, directly behind my parents. I sat with my spine not touching the back of the pew, hands folded in my lap. gloves are white against the dark fabric. The ceremony began. Samantha walked down the aisle. She looked beautiful, but as she passed me, her eyes caught the flash of gold and ribbons in her peripheral vision. She faltered, just a half step. She looked at me. Confusion, shock, and then a flicker of annoyance. She realized I wasn't the invisible mouse in the corner anymore. I was visible, undeniable. But the ceremony continued. Vows were exchanged. Rings were given. I watched it all, but I felt the weight of the room shifting. The gravity was no longer at the altar. It was pulling toward the third row. The reception was where the collision finally happened. The guests moved into the ballroom. The atmosphere was festive, but there was a new undercurrent of whispers. I could hear snippets as I moved through the crowd. Who is she? That's the sister? I thought she was a secretary. Did you see her rack? She's a commander. I took my assigned seat at table 19 in the back. I didn't complain. I sat down, placed my cover on the table, and waited. Samantha and Liam made their grand entrance. They did their first dance. Then, the speeches began. Samantha took the microphone. She was flushed with champagne and triumph. She wanted to reclaim the room. I am so happy, she gushed, looking at the Whitakers, to finally join a family that understands real strength. Liam, you are my hero. And Admiral Whitaker, I am so proud to be part of a legacy that actually matters. She looked toward the back of the room, toward me. Unlike some people, she added with a teasing laugh, who prefer to hide behind desks, we Whitakers are people of action. The room went dead, silent. It wasn't a joke anymore. It was mean. And with me sitting there in full dress blues, it looked petty. Then, a chair scraped against the floor. Loudly. At the head table, Admiral Thomas Whitaker stood up. He was a tall man, imposing even in his 60s. He wore a tuxedo, but he carried himself like he was wearing armor. He didn't look at Samantha. He didn't look at his son. He looked at table 19. He stepped down from the dais. He began to walk across the dance floor. The silence in the room stretched tight, like a rubber band about to snap. My father looked nervous. My mother looked terrified. Samantha looked confused, the microphone sagging in her hand. The Admiral walked with purpose. He navigated around the tables until he stopped 3 feet in front of me. I stood up immediately. I snapped my heels together. I squared my shoulders. I raised my right hand in a crisp, perfect salute. Admiral, I said. My voice was clear, projected from the diaphragm, filling the silent pocket of the room. The Admiral stood there for a beat, looking at me. Then he raised his hand and returned the salute slowly, holding it for a second longer than protocol required. Commander Reyes, he said. He dropped his hand. I dropped mine. Then he did something that made the entire room gasp. He stepped forward and extended his hand. He gripped mine firmly, covering it with his other hand. I didn't know, the Admiral said, his voice thick with emotion. I saw the name on the guest list, but I didn't put it together. You go by Reyes professionally. My son only ever called you Siren. I nodded. Yes, Admiral. OPSEC. He shook his head, looking at me with a mixture of awe and gratitude. 2 years ago, the Admiral said, turning slightly so the room could hear him. During Operation Veil, my eldest son, Marcus, was the lead pilot on that extraction team. A murmur went through the crowd. They were hit by a typhoon, the Admiral continued. Systems down. 0 visibility. Fuel critical. They were blind. He looked back at me. There was an intelligence officer on the comms. She stayed on the line for 6 hours. She manually calculated their vector using thermal satellite relays. She guided them through a mountain range in pitch black. He paused. My son told me that voice was the only thing that kept him calm. He said, "Dad, the siren brought us home." The Admiral's eyes shone. "You saved my boy, Commander. You saved 23 men that night." He let go of my hand, but he didn't step back. "Why are you sitting at table 19? He asked, his voice hardening. "It was my assigned seat, sir," I said. The Admiral turned to look at the head table. He looked at Samantha, who was pale, trembling, realizing she had just mocked the woman who saved her brother-in-law's life. He looked at my parents, who were staring at me like I was a stranger. "Not anymore," the Admiral said. He gestured toward the head table. "Please, Commander, join us. I have a lot of questions about your analysis on the South China Sea situation." I walked with the Admiral back to the head table. The walk felt different this time. I wasn't the invisible sister. I was the commander walking alongside a 4-star admiral. As we passed my parents' table, my father stood up halfway. "Cassie?" he stammered. We didn't know." I stopped. I looked at him. "You didn't know because you never asked, Dad," I said quietly. "You assumed." I didn't wait for his response. I kept walking. Samantha sat down as I approached the head table. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She looked small. The dress, the flowers, the expensive party, it all looked like a costume now. I sat down next to the Admiral. For the next hour, we ignored the wedding. We ignored the cake cutting. We talked strategy. We talked about global threat levels. We talked the language of people who carry the weight of the world. My parents tried to come over once. My mother had a smile plastered on her face, ready to claim credit for my success. "Cassie, darling," she started, reaching for my shoulder. I turned. I didn't smile. "Mother?" I said. "The Admiral and I are discussing a classified matter regarding fleet readiness. I'm sure you understand." I used the same tone I used to dismiss junior analysts. Polite, final. The Admiral looked at her. He didn't invite her to sit. My mother pulled her hand back as if she had been burned. She retreated to her table, where she sat in silence, watching the daughter she had ignored for 30 years command the attention of the most powerful man in the room. At the end of the night, as the guests were leaving, Samantha approached me. She had been crying. Her makeup was smudged. "You ruined my wedding," she whispered. "You did this on purpose. You wanted to show me up." I looked at her. I looked at the commander stripes on my sleeve. "I didn't do this for you, Sam," I said. "I did this because I'm done hiding." I reached into my purse. I pulled out a thick envelope. It was my wedding gift to her. Inside was the deed to the lake house she had always wanted. I had bought it outright with the bonuses from my last 3 deployments. I had planned to give it to her quietly, to help her start her life. I looked at the envelope. Then I put it back in my purse. "I'm happy for you, Sam," I said, "but I think you've had enough handouts." I walked out of the ballroom. Outside, the night air was cool. My driver was waiting, a Navy petty officer sent by Director Wexler. He opened the door for me. "Where to, Commander?" "The Pentagon," I said. "I have a shift starting at 600. "Aye, ma'am." I got into the car. I watched the country club fade into the distance. I took off my cover. I leaned my head back. The silence in the car wasn't lonely. It wasn't heavy. It was the silence of a job well done. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a mouse. I didn't feel like a siren. I felt like myself.